Hi, this is just going to be a quick video introducing how you could use Informatica Axon to get started with GDPR. We're going to take a look at 5 core facets: regulation, policy, glossary, system, and process. There's much more you could do, but this is just a get started video. First up, you might want to start by creating a GDPR regulation. GDPR is made up of 99 articles which you could create using our bulk upload template under a general data protection regulation parent. This is going to make it referenceable. It's a shortened version within the tool which you can see whenever you need to, and you can also use associated URL links to reference the full regulatory text. Later, when we come to create policies, we'll be able to contextualize them by linking back to the regulatory articles that inspired or influenced them. Once we've created a GDPR regulation, we actually want to translate that into a GDPR policy. Now, lots of people ask what the difference between these two facets is. The regulation is going to be the external text that's come from an external body. The policy is going to be how you interpret that. So we're only going to internalize the regulatory requirements that are actually going to have an impact on how the data is being used. For instance, Article 99, while listed in our reg facet, is relating to the way GDPR is enforced, and this is unlikely to inspire internal policy for organisations, so we don't necessarily need to bring that over. Article 30, however, relates to how we should process personal data, and that is what we can see a little bit of being broken down in this screenshot. We need to think about the purpose of the processing of the data and the lawful basis for processing it as well. So those are the pieces we're going to dig into in a little bit more detail in our GDPR policy. We also want to link those policy items back to the regulation that influenced them. So all of those processing elements will be linked to Article 30, as that is where they have initiated from. Once you've documented your regulation and your policy, you want to start thinking about which personal data elements you want to capture in the glossary. These could be things like name, phone number, religion. You also want to think about the different broader categories that these fit into, such as basic personal details, or if things are HR related, they might be HR details. By categorizing these things and looking at the hierarchy in the glossary, you will then begin to build up your personal data tree. Once you've done that, you're going to want to link back your personal data elements to the policies that will regulate them. So personal data elements such as name might just be linked to GDPR policy in general, whereas an element like religion might be linked to special category data because it's going to have to be treated differently. The policy will differ. You also want to use your glossary to capture your data subjects and recipients, so the people you're collecting data from and the bodies that you're passing it on to, whether that be your customers and potential applicants for jobs who you collect it from, or regulatory bodies and auditors that you pass it on to. All of this information can be captured in the glossary for later connection. Next up, you want to think about where this data is actually living. The personal data is moving through your organisation and is captured in various different systems. You might want to prioritise things like data entry points, client databases, and trading systems as places to begin looking at for personal data. This can be a manual exercise, or if you're looking at one of our other tools such as Enterprise Data Catalog or Secure at Source, you can automate the process of scanning your prioritised systems to bring in the personal data elements. You should also remember when you're creating your systems to link back the ones that do contain personal data to the relevant pieces of GDPR policy. Finally, on to process. Once you've got the other more data-focused pieces in place, you're going to want to start to think about how you're processing personal data day to day. You can create maps to show how the personal data is processed, being passed through various different steps until an aim is achieved. You can then use the relationships that we've talked about throughout this and in various other videos to link the process steps back to different elements which relate to them. For instance, the systems we discussed, the glossary concepts which include personal data categories as well as data subjects and recipients, and also the policies that are going to govern the processes as they go. A couple of additional things you might want to consider are which business areas or legal entities are responsible for the data throughout the processes. For instance, we can see here London plc is acting as the data controller. These will be documented in the business area and legal entity facet, but can be linked in to the process map as you see here. Finally, you're going to continue to maintain all of this good work and monitor how the personal data is being used with things like data quality, which will help you meet your Article 5 requirements, things like data privacy impact assessments, which you can construct as workflows to satisfy your Article 35 requirements, and also, of course, your reported processing activity, which you will use to satisfy your Article 30 requirements. This is just a small bit of what you can do with Axon to meet your GDPR use cases. Thank you for listening.